My name is Mark McCormack. I'm a singer, I'm a technologist. I've got a computer science degree originally, and an MBA from Melbourne. I have an entertainment technology business that I couldn't get funded. So I knocked on a lot of doors, and people got it, but they didn't get it. And it's like, well, you know, is it like Atlassian? You know, is it one of those sort of businesses? Is it, you know, is it databases? What is it? How do we sell this sort of stuff? So I started ENTTecH. There's a lot of interest groups out there. There's FinTech, which is about financial technologies. You know, they interface with Xero and lend you money based on your cash flow over a various period of time. There's Sports Tech, which is, you know, like Fitbits and connects with your diets and all sorts of stuff. So why not entertainment technologies? I was also a founding committee member of Startup Victoria, which is sort of like the founding or the umbrella organisation for Victorian startups. And this started off, Startup Victoria started up as a meetup about as big as this. And it was actually called Lean Startup Melbourne. It was actually about lean startup methodology. And it grew from there. And people thought, Jesus. And then we got a couple of founders down, and everyone thought, geez, that was a good story. So from there, it grew into what now is the biggest startup organisation in Australia with about 13,000 members on their database. They fly speakers in from Silicon Valley to speak at various events. They run Startup Week in Melbourne. There's actually a formal CEO now. They actually got government funded and so forth. So entertainment technologies. Thank you all for coming. You're all from varying backgrounds. There's recording industry people. There's investors. There's government people. There's gamers. There's looks like a music on back there, and a whole bunch of people. So welcome. This is Helen Simonson, who's the head of ENTTecH, and Helen's going to sort of shortly also address you and tell you about the space and how ACME and ENTTecH fits into this startup ecosystem. So ENTTecH is about creators and inventors of entertainment technologies and putting them in the spotlight, just like a project management tool, just like a game, just like any other startup opportunity, and putting it up there as a valid business and educating both investors, founders, and the broader community on the validity of entertainment technologies. Anyone know how much, I don't know, Beyonce made last year? A lot. Now that's a performer, so that's just her part of the equation. So around Beyonce is film production, there's lighting companies, there's tour operators, there's fan discovery apps that actually connect Beyonce with her audience. And when she's traveling to Texas, 3 months before she's going to get there, virally it spreads throughout that community. And then there's ticket resellers. You know, if anyone sort of missed out on a ticket to, I don't know, the cricket, there's various sort of ticket resellers. Like, it's like sophisticated scalpers on the internet now. It's fantastic. I wish I started one. So there's a broad base of business opportunities in entertainment, and that's what we're about. So anything in entertainment technology, you have a product, you research it, you price it, you talk to your customers, you market to them, you communicate to them in an inspiring way and actually want your product. And then you talk to your customers and go, well, what do you think of the product? Well, we liked it, but we actually sort of wanted maybe this and this sort of feature. And then you have a standard product iteration process, and a standard product development process. Yeah, it's not a black box. You know, they go, oh, invest in entertainment or gaming. What, invest in film? What about film? Oh, what about music? Oh, all those rock and rollers are on drugs, aren't they? So it's really to dispel all those myths and to go, you know what, there is opportunity. And a shitload. So, tonight's event, Helen's going to speak next, and there's the lovely Gemma, who is part of the ENTTecH Accelerator, is going to talk about her business, and Gemma's going to South by Southwest, which is the largest entertainment music technology festival in the world out of Texas. So as part of a government trade initiative there. Let me see here. Part of ENTTecH going forward is some senior execs from major Australian record labels. Some could be here tonight. Game houses, YouTubers, the guys from Black Magic Design, which if you read some of the ENTTecH intro, is started in Melbourne and is used by Hollywood to Bollywood. I mean, these guys have just taken on the world. And, you know, some of it was organic, and then someone said, oh, wow, there's a business in this stuff, and threw some money at them, and they grew. So that's what it's about. I have a bunch of other stuff here. So ENTTecH is also about, if you've got a great idea, whether it's a game, or whether it's a film technology, or a filming app, or some sort of viral video platform that interfaces with influencers and so forth. ENTTecH is about bringing advisors in as well, seasoned entrepreneurs, money men who are going to say, well, you know, have you actually thought about that, or and have a history of sort of studying this sort of market. Bunch of more stuff here. Thanks to Vino Mofo, Melbourne-based success story. ACMEX, of course, Startup Victoria, they're supporting us here. Network Dynamics is an Australian-based hosting company that sells around the world. I'm going to pass over to Helen, and coming up is Gemma, and then we're going to have a fireside panel chat with some Melbourne Angels and some advertising people, and then I don't know, anyone want to get up and play the spoons?
Welcome to ACMEX, and before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which we gather and pay my respects to the elders past and present, both the Wurundjeri and the Boonwurrung nations, which we meet in both of their lands. So welcome, and welcome to ACMEX. So we thought, after talking with Mark, and Mark came to us to say that there was an opportunity to start thinking about focusing on an ENTTecH filter for startups. We got really interested. ACMEX is part of the Museum of ACME, and I'm assuming many of you may have gone to ACME. There's not a massive history in cultural institutions opening their doors to industries that they support. There's a couple of examples internationally, and when we were we brought in a new director and developing our renewal ideas, we decided that it was really important for us to sort of open the kind of cultural institution doors and work really alongside the creative industries that we represent. So we represent film, television, digital games, and screen-based arts across the breadth of that. So our relationship with music is in relation to how they roll out in those forms, and the notion of digital culture is also something that we look at in popular culture. So most of you have seen that within the context of the museum. The idea for us was to have a co-working space with 60 desks. It's now moved to 70 desks, where we literally work alongside the small to medium startups and companies and small to medium arts practitioners that come and want to be at ACME, and that's a really important part of our ethos. So some of the models we saw internationally, they would have a bit of an incubation site, but everybody went and lived in that little site miles away from the museum itself, and that we were about trying to open up our relationships, particularly as we had a great interest in entertainment, media and creative tech. So we were working with a lot of people that are exploring AI, robotics, AR, VR, and any of those multitudes of new contemporary creative tech, and we wanted to work with them and hopefully support. So that began our journey, and we created a co-working space. In fact, I took a couple of people through before. If you want to have a look with me in the co-working space, which is through those doors, I'm more than happy to kind of show you the space as well. It's been a really interesting experiment for us as an organisation. So it means our creative technologists that work with us, our programmers are working directly with and having relationships with, which is really productive. So about a year into our experience, we decided that the startup world was really interesting. We had acknowledged that a lot of the creative industries were a bit slow to start up. They came through probably more of a lineage of small to medium businesses or artistic practitioners, and that there was a gap in supporting the industries to understand about startups as possibly a really effective way for companies to build business traction and think about scale a bit differently. For many of the creative industries that we were working with, they were working very much from a commission or bespoke idea, that they would do a commission or a project and then move on to the next project, none of which could scale and none of which could make them much money. And in a broader environment where funding was reducing and constricting, it was getting harder for practitioners to survive, and creative practitioners contributed significantly to the notion of developing business. So putting that together, we started to look at what we would put together within our co-working space. And I'm throwing up this idea because we also decided that research in terms of creative technology was incredibly important. So often it has been tucked away in universities, very hard to access, particularly for smaller independent companies. How do they get access to that kind of research thinking? That in the creative tech area is really important. So you might have an idea around a technology piece, but you do need to understand the scan and scope of technology when you're going to work with that technology. And the researchers are the ones that are doing all the heavy lifting. So we brought in University of Melbourne and RMIT, and we also now have a relationship with Monash as our three major key partners. And so we're building those networks to allow our companies that we work alongside to have access, and we also support particular projects. And this one I wanted to say because we just ended up being able to present this, myself and the researcher in New York in November, and it's a really interesting software concept around soft power mapping. And that may not be of huge interest to everybody what soft power mapping is, but in the context of entertainment industries, it basically says the importance of the role of entertainment or any arts and cultural context in what it does for bigger trade relationships. So it's hard to quantify what soft power is, and this mapping is a kind of process and a data visualization to help present business cases of why the kind of reach of any kind of product that might get made in Australia is a global reach, and the importance of soft power. So that's sort of the research end. There's a lot of other different research projects we do, and we put in contact, constantly put in contact researchers with people who are working in certain areas that need to kind of do a deep dive in a particular area of technology that they wouldn't get if they were just trying to work it through as a business idea. We have run 2 accelerators, and I've popped this accelerator in because it's a very different type of accelerator. And on the strength of the work we did with our ENTTecH accelerator, which I'll focus on in a minute, we were given money from Creative Victoria to work with the State Library, so 2 institutions coming together to work more broadly with artists. So again, there'll be musicians and a whole host of programs. This particular project that's just come through one of our boot camps is a really clever idea around the concept of motels in regional areas, like that retro motel being great locations for music bands, and this idea of being able to travel on road shows, which is the sort of digital part of the product. So much more of an arts end to the concept, but a really interesting value proposition in itself. And interestingly, what we've been discovering is the lean methodology, which we use very much in our accelerator, is actually useful for artists because it makes sense for them to sort of not have to go and do an MBA or do sort of formal business training, but they get the kind of guidelines in which to really understand market fit, and it's quite useful. So that's been the sort of last year. In fact, we're just coming to the end of another boot camp that we have been running with Foundry, and we're about to start our accelerator here at ENTTecH with the Foundry team. But most importantly, we've been working with Launch Victoria funding to really do a deep dive in creative tech and support what are really early startups in many ways. That doesn't mean the companies or the founders don't come with a big background or a lot of experience. So in many cases, the people that we're working with have got film, television, theatre backgrounds with a fabulous history in this area, and but they're new to startup. So our job has been to introduce the lean, to build up our networks, to help them do that kind of customer validation process. We are a complete supporter of doing that customer validation before you even start that product iteration period. It's really important for these kind of products to really work out whether the market's interested and how they might pivot and how they might reframe their businesses. So we started 2 years ago with this funding, and we've done 2 accelerators. Some of them are not necessarily entertainment tech, but I'm just going to go quickly through some of them that are, and then end with Gemma doing a presentation, because Gemma went through our last accelerator and she has created a really interesting new entertainment product. So often what we're working with at the moment is very established design companies who are really interested in commercialising differently. So they have, as I said before, come from a background where they've done very bespoke products every time they get commissioned, and that they make IP out of that process, that if they had the commercial thinking, that slightly different recalibrated commercial thinking, they could get that to market differently. So going into the accelerator, Grumpy Sailor is a company from Sydney that is really renowned in its creative technology design interface, and it works with Google Creative Lab, and it does a whole host of things with a whole lot of technology companies and interests. It is the first time that it's taking one of its IPs, that pieces of IP that it created through theatre production with a really infamous UK theatre company called Punch Drunk, and it created this incredible audio experience that is now ready to be software, hardware, and at that early stage of really evolving. So the companies kind of come from a different founder background, if you like. They come from really established, deep industry knowledge, and they're really learning and working through the kind of lean methodology. So they have been working with a couple of investors that are helping support their thinking and moving of that product. And they are working across a lot of the museum sector because they know it well, and they're getting that B2B traction with this particular product. And that's allowing them to then think about the scale and working at, potentially finding investors.
So can I just ask, what's the name of this?
The product is called Rover.
I don't care about the product.
Oh, what is it?
Who?
Who are they? They're called Grumpy Sailor.
So that's this organisation.
That's right. And they've made a product that they would have done in a bespoke kind of way, and they're now commercialising it.
If you don't give me the name, I can't find this.
Gotcha. Just call it that. Laterally, you may not find on because they're really just developing their MVP, but they have been mentored by Blackmagic Design. They have got a really interesting network model for film industry. So they decided that originally decided that it was going to be an equity platform for film and television. They found out pretty quickly once they started to do their validation that wasn't going to be as easy as they thought. But what they realised is that there was a need for a solution, kind of head to tail solution around networking, film, scheduling, those kinds of things. So they've got a developer, they've got a really great mentoring within Blackmagic Design, and they're really evolving, but they're very, very early stages. And again, we're quite happy to bring those early stages. The thing that happens for a team like this is if they come to the ACME Accelerator, they get access to the CEO from Victoria and Screen Australia and Blackmagic Design and anyone else, because that is our networks that we can bring to the table for those kinds of people that are trying to validate their products. Magic Pi is really interesting product for us. We've been working with this team for a while now, and they're now we're piloting it. It's an AI virtual tour guide. So they're doing it in Mandarin at the moment. That's the first language, but it's comfortable in a number of languages. And what's interesting for us about this is that it offers an opportunity for international visitors to museums to have a device that is very sophisticated, that has a really great back end for museums, so we collect a lot of data about how people are moving in and around the space. And it has lots of, it can include AR and VR, it has a number of capacities, but the AI capacity means as you keep bringing information to that AI machine learning, it builds its capacity as it continues. So it's not that kind of high intense content delivery that you've got to do when you normally do a sort of unsophisticated product. So making content available in a predominantly monocultured world, which Australia unfortunately is when it comes to its cultural institutions, it is quite difficult for people who don't speak English to get proper access to what is there. This team is now working with NGV because they've piloted with us and they've been able to showcase in the exhibition, and they've brought a whole lot of people. They've also got quite a lot of Chinese investment backing. This one's a really interesting product. It's in early stages. It is a concept of a filter that is in real time, that is based on algorithms that have come from research about how the eye sees colour. So the idea behind this is that in digital post-production, a lot of work goes on at treating digital moving images as it currently stands. And this is a real-time filter, so it means it takes a good 6 weeks out of the post-production process, and it means on set, and particularly for live broadcast, that colour process can happen really effectively. So they have been working on really just building the MVP of this, and they're sort of in the process of dealing with that. So again, it's a really interesting product. They're working with an international Spanish university because that's where the initial algorithm and the science work has come from, which is how you code how we see. So that human science thinking of how we code that into algorithm. So interesting product. We also, because we're a cultural institution and we exhibit and install endlessly, this has been a great project for us because it represents a lot of our sector of people who are making really interesting interactive content. This particular team uses that idea of brain, the brain reads visuals and makes visuals in very beautiful digital installations, and they're quite big scale. And like most artists, they just get a commission and they make it work, they move over to the next one, they make it work, and they kind of eke out a living, if you like. What the accelerator made them start thinking about is how they could make work and tour it better and get much more leverage on it. So this wasn't necessarily a project of massive scale, nor are they interested in investors, but what it is a project that says, if we're working with these artists, we get an opportunity to help them and assist them. And if anyone's been to the NGV and seen Team Lab, it's a Japanese company that does the most incredibly immersive projection images. They have a staff of 150 people, mainly software developers, and they go between every major cultural institution and gallery right through to shopping centres. So there is probably more commercial thinking in this product than they know yet, but whether they want to do that or need to do that, our role is that we help them along to become more sustainable in that case. So my favourite product of all, because she's sitting there and I have to say that, is audio plays. So Gemma's going to come and talk about audio play. She may not say this, so I'll get to say that about it because Australians are a little bit too humble. But this product won the Pause Fest pitching competition, and both QUT, Collider, and Acme Excel support the Australian winner to go to the Creative Business Cup in Denmark, and Gemma is going to Denmark. And similarly, as Mark said, she is heading off to South by Southwest. But importantly, the Victorian government has recognised how interested they are in this particular product and have supported her in that trip to South by Southwest. So she's part of the Victorian delegation, and she's going to be presenting her product at Australia House in South by Southwest, and we've been having conversations about that in the last couple of days, because it's really, the government's very interested in positioning Victoria as a place for where, you know, creative industries, entertainment tech, creative tech is really thriving, and I think that Gemma, once you all see her work, will probably feel the same. So I'm going to bring Gemma up. Thank you, everyone.
And Gemma, just before you start, Gemma's going to talk about her audio play business, and there's later on there's a fireside chat with some of the Melbourne Angels and some advertising people and some record company people as well. So what I'd like, Gemma's not here for an official Shark Tank pitch. She's not asking for money. It's a broad sort of talk about her business, but I've got 2 roaming mics, so by all means, if you have a question for Gemma, then ask me and I'll hand you the mic.
Yes, so my name is Gemma Pepper. I'm co-founder of Audio Play. So this is going to be a bit of a chat, bit of a pitch, just because you know, it's better to be more informal. But essentially, parents agonise over screen time. So whilst they want to give their kids rich digital experiences, they're also racked with guilt when their kids spend hours sitting on the couch, not moving, not engaging with the world, glued to screens. So that's the kind of issue that we're starting to tackle. With audio play, kids step into the story and they become the character. So they put on headphones and they become the character, physically playing out the action. So I'm going to show you what that means with this short video.
Let's do this! Cross, go, hurry! You guys have got to get away! You need somewhere to hide now!
Leo, shh! What are you doing?
Who's that? Turn it!
Cover your head and the young car is swooping you! Ah! Give Leo a gooey high five.
So that gives you a taster of what this is. So it's very physical, very engaged for the players. So there's a number of different ways that you can tell stories, but audio play is unique. So nobody hears the same thing. Every character thinks they are the hero of the story that they're hearing, and it's not until they play a second time as another character that they hear an entirely new side to the story. So when we're looking at games for 2 players or 4 players, there's the potential to actually show really diverse points of view and tackle issues like empathy and different ways of looking at stories that is not your classic binary storytelling where there's goodies and baddies, right and wrong, that kind of thing. So the platform actually lends itself well to a range of different developmental outcomes for kids. So encouraging imagination, teamwork, empathy, and as you've seen, physical activity in terms of the way it's played. So we've worked through in our product development process, we've had around 1,000 kids come through and play this, and the feedback that we've got has been pretty overwhelming. So for instance, Cass gave us 13 out of 10. She's 9 and saying that it was a lot like a really cool video game or movie, but much better because you were inside it. So this show was off the charts. That's pretty indicative of the kind of feedback that we get from kids. So the team behind Audio Play have over 15 years experience writing, directing and producing film, theatre and events. Our experience is pretty broad and we've worked with a number of players in that space. Our first series, The Turners, is based on Nick Elliott's book trilogy. So that's proving the potential for us to work with existing titles. We're also in conversation at the moment with Sydney Opera House, the Maritime Museum, National Maritime Museum, and also ABC Kids and audio studios out of the ABC. So there's a lot of industry interest in what this platform can do. For us, AudioPlay will ultimately be a global subscription platform. So that will distribute our own content as well as content produced by third parties. So to grow to this scale, we're engaging accommodating new audiences with a combination of free and pay-per episode experiences to kind of grow our audience base, get traction in the product, and then also grow the range of content that we're able to offer. So we see AudioPlay as being the next big thing in kids' entertainment. So for us, we're really interested in conversations with investors and just starting that process because we know it's a long conversation and we need to build up that trust. And also just getting the product out there. So it's up on the App Store at the moment. We're in the process of finalising our Android app as well. So if you have kids, nieces, nephews, download it, get into it, play it in the lounge room, they're gonna love it.
You can do it as an adult, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's fun, absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen. I'd like to perhaps open the floor to some questions from ladies and gentlemen. There's Paul Barron, second to the right, with the glasses from Melbourne Angels, and there's so many names going through my head.
Morris.
I'm sorry. Morris.
That's right.
Hello, Morris.
Hello.
And Alana up the front. Alana. She's from We Are Road, which is a Melbourne-based record label. And from DDB, Karen. Hello. So I just sort of perhaps like to start the discussion that if you could repurpose Harry Potter this way, I don't know, could you do it? Easily, simply?
Yes, let's do that.
Let's do that.
So I have a microphone.
So do I.
You're the content.
David Melbourne Angels, and I love asking questions.
Great.
You're a little hard to find. I've been doing some quick Googling. You're not that easy to find. You kind of, there's a lot of other stuff out in that space, so that's a challenge. What am I right? So, I don't know a lot about it yet, but can you just explain a little bit? What you've produced is some content and a content delivery platform that looks something different from what we've had before. So you've got a particular way of delivering content to kids. It could be to others. I think of some rather grown-up kids running around firing paintballs at each other, and I'm thinking to myself, why shouldn't that have an audience going with it? I can think of a whole range of things. I mean, people jumping out of airplanes on parachutes, why shouldn't that be part of the water? You know, there's a whole range of possibilities that come. But I'm an investor, I'm interested in how you make money out of this. So can you just give me a bit of an insight into what your business is, or what you think it might be, in the sense of what are you going to sell, to who, what's your product, who do you sell it to, are you a website with something you download and sell it directly to any consumers? I doubt it. I think it's more likely you've got some sort of a channel to actually get through. You understand that channel, you know what the channel is, and do you keep the technology and create the content and sell the content, or what exactly is it that you're planning on selling to a customer? Bearing in mind customers who want to write checks, they want to pay you money. So could you just fill us in a little bit on
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
you see that running from a business side?
So for us, this is very much an entirely new platform for entertainment. So you have film, you have books, you have podcasts. AudioPlay is its own thing. And the thing that makes it very different is that you have multiple players experiencing the story simultaneously from different perspectives, which you don't get in any other platform. To the point where we're patenting the technology around the distribution and also the mechanisms for how you write that content for it to make sense. It's a very specific way of developing scripts in order for, you know, if player over here is doing this activity, for that to make sense to player over here, and how all those different stories interrelate in a simultaneous experience. for us, there are many different verticals that we can see this platform having value. You know, just to throw a few out there, kind of in a more corporate sector, in a training sense, particularly tackling a number of complex issues around interpersonal skills, through to looking at education sector and dealing with historical moments, or kind of teaching kids about different moments in time, and the fact that history is always written from one person's perspective, but actually it's experienced from them. So there's a number of different verticals for us to engage with. We've come from a theatre background, and so we've kind of evolved this way of storytelling over quite a period, because we're artists, and that's kind of how we've worked. So now that we've moved into this period of actually focusing on it as a product and kind of streamlining that, our first process was kind of just being focused about where our market would be to begin with. So specifically choosing children, particularly because with adults there's a lot of coaxing to get them to play, because everyone hates audience participation. It's a general blanket rule. No one wants to look like an idiot. So
I love looking like that.
Can I jump in? Can I jump in, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I perhaps ask Karen if in product placement in films, videos, rock and roll film clips, whether it's something to do on a skateboard?
Just before, I don't want to hold the mic, and I'll happily hand it over. But can I just say, you aren't answering my question. What I want you to tell me is something about what your business looks like. I get it, I understand your opportunity, I believe it's there, but are you going to be in the licensing, are you going to be in the content, are you going to be in, what business do you think you're going to be in? If you don't know, we'll just say...
No. We're going to hold the platform. In order for us to grow to a scale, there's no other content out there, so we have to produce the content. Until we're at a scale where there's others who are happy to produce content. But ultimately, we want to hold the platform.
So if I can perhaps clarify, it sounds like Jim is creating both a methodology of telling stories and also a platform, and kicking it off with your own content, and then later down the track there's an ability to have that, not only the patented process of how you tell the stories, and then a platform potentially to deliver it.
A couple of things. The tech point of view, you look at audio, we looked at things like HoloLens and the technology that's sort of coming further down the track as the next wave. And then secondly, in creating the content, is there a psychologist on the team to basically vet a lot of this stuff, particularly if you're dealing with kids?
So in terms of other technologies, we see a huge range of opportunities in terms of partnering around augmented reality, HoloLens, and also around IoT, and kind of potentially using objects, smart objects around the house to kind of help to build a good theatrical experience. At this point, we're very early stage, so we're being very focused about not getting distracted by the bells and whistles. In terms of the nature of the way we work, we consult with parents and we consult with kids right the way through the scripting process. So there's not specifically a psychologist in there. However, we are working with a range of, it's a very consultative model, and we're also working with people who have an experience of making theatre for kids and making experiences for kids.
Given that you talk about corporate training and all that sort of stuff, that's probably where you look at overlaying something like that.
Yeah, and as we scale, then we'll also look for the skill sets that are most appropriate for us to be able to produce high quality content that really hits the mark in the verticals where we're looking to target. So at the moment we're kind of going, okay, kids, let's nail the kids market. And in doing so, make great quality content that kids really love. It's also ticking boxes for the parents. Because, in that market, our users and our customers are slightly different, and it's sort of navigating that space to make sure that the product is meeting both outcomes for both of those users.
One last question. You're talking about the platform and getting external content providers coming in. How are you going to curate that?
That will evolve over time as we kind of figure out how that works, but essentially the quality of the content is paramount for us. And so it will be a process of us making sure that the teams that we work with are producing content of a quality that we're happy with, because it's only going to damage our brand if we're not. But also, we kind of feel that is a little way down the track, particularly because we're so early stage, and we do need to have a body of content and a body of users in order to get to a scale where that feels like a valuable proposition for customers to kind of buy into as a subscription model like Netflix.
I mean, fairness to say, this demographic, it's like when parents
Buy Frozen. Kids watch it and personally parents. I mean, Frozen 2 is just coming out. So the concept of this demographic is that they will come and that the repeat playing of this will be very much part of that business model.
I actually like it. It's sort of like, I'm sorry?
old school play.
Old school play, yeah. Becoming like, who knows, the Andrew Lloyd Webber of, I don't know. You become a publisher, like a random house or something of plays in with virtual reality, and maybe we could put some McDonald's burgers in the augmented reality. Carol from DW, I just like to, part of what ENTTecH is about is actually engaging brands and investors who actually want to get a return on their investment. I mean, people have made their money. You don't drop down the drain, you actually want to get a return on it, put it in the bank, or you can bank people like Gemma, who might give you 10, 20x your investment. And how do you weave all this stuff together? So part of what I've got Karen down is to understand how brands can actually interact with you and your business. If you're a skateboard brand, who do you align with? How do brands who have money and actually want to reach youth, and brands want to reach a lot of people and communicate the message, whether it's a music festival or what have you. So I don't know, it's a random sort of question. Any thoughts? And also, Jenna, how would you pick up the phone and call Karen? I'll ask you that after
Yeah, hustle on.
How would you find it? Oh, very good. Sorry, yeah.
Old school. Yeah, it's very. I mean, brands today really struggle in terms of media relevance. There was a report that was just released that said, and that's in New York, do this every 2 years, but the vast majority of people wouldn't care if 79% of brands disappeared tomorrow. So people don't, on that scale, really care that much about the vast majority of brands that are out there. So brands are struggling with media relevance. So it really is about finding roles, in entertainment, in festivals, wherever they might be, for brands to be able to have useful roles to play in people's lives, to add values and so forth. And you think about, you ask a question, Mark, about festivals. You think about festivals like, you think about Burning Man and so forth, and that whole philosophy is around what's your offering, and brands have to think about that in people's lives. What is it you have to offer? What you've got that's generous? What are you putting into this? Is it enriching? Is it inspiring? Is it educational? What is the role the brand's going to play in people's lives? So I think part of your platform, you're really careful with kids.
Yeah.
And what kind of brand, I think about Frozen, and it'd be the same sort of relationship. Is there a relevant role for that brand to play in that storyline? And then, yes, then there's a role for it. But yeah, it's finding that relevance is key, and I think that's what brands struggle with today. We live in a world where we used to be able to brands used to just be able to talk about what they, put out their big ads and say, hey, this is what we're about, this is, who we are, and this is, what we want you to believe about us. But we now have the internet that's broken all of that, and we now experience things, so brands have to demonstrate that through experience. And platforms like yours are awesome in that sense, because I'm making this up, but Lego, a kid could play with Lego in that platform and then have a different experience with Lego as a brand, and so with Lego's about play and the future of play, so what might that mean in that context? But yeah, it's that connective tissue about. Yeah, again, if it's relevant, I think you just don't want it to stand out, and that's where brands trip up. Is when it's kind of this thing that feels left to centre or inserted into the wrong place, or it feels like an overt sponsorship. There's nothing worse, because then it feels Facebook's interesting as a platform, because it's a new platform that's used an old school model, which is interruption, and we're moving away from interruption, and that's what brands suffer at the moment, because people don't want that interruption. They want relevancy, and they want meaning. So yeah, it's product placement, and that it feels natural, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Karen. My background's been predominantly digital advertising, but worked across the various facets of advertising as well. And it's about brand purpose, and people know what the hell is that brand doing here, and people get pissed off, and it does more damage to the brand as well. There's a great Google augmented reality demo, and it's these two Mexicans who are like stick figures. So you get out your OK Google speaker, and if you've got your phone, you look at it, and you say, OK Google, you say some keyword, and these stick figures come to life and dance, and they've got cha-cha and all sorts of stuff. And imagine if it was a cheese break or something, I don't know. But to Karen's point, to actually insert in the story at a tasteful, relevant, communicative point that matters and is relevant is the challenge for ad agencies to find those new opportunities all the time to reach us and go, oh, that's cool. Oh, Furphy's beer. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Or whatever it is.
And I think with that, agencies and brands are continually looking for an innovative way to have their product put in a contextually relevant environment.
Yeah.
And so that, we work with all of the platforms and so forth, just to what's new, how can X brand achieve a sense of relevancy in a new way and actually be purposeful and useful in someone's life.
Yeah.
That genuine medium value. And so any new platform that is out there that could potentially offer a brand a new way to connect with an audience that they might otherwise struggle to connect with is an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And ad agencies get their door knocked on all the time. Hey, I've got this. I actually had a restaurant advertising business 20 years ago. It was a dirty business. But it was the panels on top of the urinals on the back of the bloody doors. And we thought, Jesus, you stand at the urinal and capture the audience. We can separate the genders, so shavers to whatever. And knocking on the media buyers' doors and ad agencies' doors, it's tough. And ad agencies have got to justify every goddamn cent they spend. And to test that, okay, DDB spent, for example, let's say $50,000 from McDonald's, and for Karen and her team to actually place, say if it was McDonald's, because everyone knows the brand, to place it and test it. McDonald's is a big brand with a lot of money. If Karen and her team have such responsibility and have to research and test stuff so well to make it work, so it's not that easy. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and if you're brave, like Gemma is, and Karen and her team is, you never know. So
one more
question.
I've been hanging out for this one. Sure. Hi, David. I've invested in something not dissimilar but different. So essentially, what you've got is a multi-track audible play. Is that right? Is the path to market a content play or a licensing play for existing content? So the Harry Potter is hey, can we license that, create it?
Both.
But which is the first path to market?
At this point, we have started with a licensing play. However, that is very seed, it's just testing different models. And essentially, we launched on the 2nd of Jan. So we're looking at what are the different ways that we can engage the audience. What is the content that resonates with them? And for the moment, we've kind of started with this 4-part series, which is based on the books, just to kind of show that that is a possibility in terms of opening up conversations for new content. But also we do have other content that is original content, not based on licensed material. It's also that business of the amount of energy that goes into creating new content versus establishing a platform, and kind of where we want to invest our energy, basically.
Fantastic. Could I ask a question? Could you also create an additional mode? I might call it dad mode, but because I've got 4 kids, and they were all young, but they were grown up. but the dad mode, the parent mode, where the parents have the opportunity to interact as a character as well, to join the
Hey,
game.
look, they can do it right now. Just dive on in.
Wow. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, we could all come together. If you like, 5 minutes, 5 minute or so toilet break and grab a drink, and we'll come back for a fireside chat about the intersection of brands, technology, creativity, and all things cosmic. Go.